In the late 1790s, London served as the capital of a global empire, expanding into a dense industrial powerhouse. William Blake, an artist and poet living in the city, saw a different reality. In his walks through the streets, he documented extreme poverty, child labor, and a pervasive sense of suffering that contradicted the official image of imperial success. Across the English Channel, the French Revolution had recently dismantled the monarchy. Radicals in England watched this uprising with hope, expecting the disenfranchised and oppressed classes at home to seize power from the privileged. Yet, as Blake observed the city, he noticed a strange passivity. Despite the filth and the starvation, the English populace remained compliant, showing no signs of the revolutionary fire burning in France. Blake addresses this silence in his poem, London. Through a first-person walk through the city, he begins to catalog the specific forces that keep a desperate population from rising up. To find the source of this inaction, we have to look at the three pillars of external authority Blake identifies in the text: the economy, the church, and the state. The first pillar is economic. In the opening lines, Blake repeats the word chartered to describe both the streets and the River Thames. Chartered refers to the privatization of common land. The government was granting exclusive rights to the wealthy, effectively turning nature itself into a series of private monopolies owned and controlled by the elite. The second pillar is ideological. Blake critiques the blackening church, a term that points to both the physical soot of the industrial era and the moral decay of a religious institution that failed to support the poor. The church's pursuit of wealth required the exploitation of the very people it was meant to protect. Blake highlights this by linking the institution directly to the chimney sweeper's cry, where child labor became the fuel for a corrupt religious establishment. The third pillar is state power, represented by the hapless soldier's sigh running in blood down palace walls. The monarchy used the poor as military tools, drafting them to protect royal palaces and enforce order, effectively preventing a French-style revolution through the threat of state violence. These three pillars, wealth, religion, and the state, create the physical and economic boundaries of the city. Blake argues that these external pressures eventually migrate inward, becoming part of the individual's own psyche. This migration leads to the core metaphor of the poem, the mind-forged manacles. Blake suggests that the citizens of London have internalized their oppression. They are held in place by their own fears and their acceptance of the status quo, creating a psychological prison that functions without the need for literal iron chains. The structure of the poem itself mimics this confinement. Blake uses iambic tetrameter. Iambic tetrameter is a poetic meter where each line has 8 syllables that follow a dud-dum rhythm, creating a sense of relentless marching control. He reinforces this with a strict A-B-A-B rhyme scheme and uniform stanza lengths. This fixed structure makes the suffering in the poem feel overwhelming and never-ending, mirroring the way the lower classes are trapped within the city's systems. However, Blake occasionally breaks the rhythm. The line, "marks of weakness, marks of woe," contains only 7 syllables, a structural weakening that reflects the permanent damage done to the spirits of London's inhabitants. By identifying these manacles as mind-forged, Blake concludes that the oppressed have become their own jailers, maintaining their own servitude through a fear of change. The poem's final stanza examines how this psychological trap corrupts the family unit through the youthful harlot's curse and the marriage hearse. Systemic poverty forced many women into prostitution as a means of survival. This desperation polluted the earliest stages of life, as the curse of the harlot impacts the tears of the newborn infant. Blake uses the oxymoron marriage hearse to criticize the loss of female rights within the marriage system. This phrase links the start of a union with death, suggesting that every aspect of London life is destined for misery under the current social order. The third stanza contains a hidden directive, urging the reader to look beyond the surface of the text. And this connects to auditory imagery throughout the poem: infants' cries, soldiers' sighs, and harlots' curses. It shifts focus from observation to active listening, highlighting a population in pain. London serves as a final warning. Blake argues that before a society can dismantle corrupt external institutions, its people must first recognize and shatter the mind-forged manacles of their own acceptance.